What you are listening to is real. The participants are not actors. They are actual litigants with a case pending in the squared circle. Both parties have agreed to dismiss their cases and have their disputes settled here in our forum, the Turnbuckle Debate.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Turnbuckle Debate. My name is Sneed.
I'm Chad.
And I am known simply as the paperclip, baby, because Tom ain't here.
And I'm Kyle Davis. He's going to be the paperclip. I'm going to be the scissors because I cut right to the point. That's a kidding. I actually ramble quite a bit, so be prepared. Your ears are going to bleed by the time you're done with this one, folks.
We're stoked to have Kyle Davis from the NWA back on for his second appearance on the debate. Kyle, you guys have been crushing it lately. You're building towards NWA 74. Kind of fill us in on the state of NWA right now.
The state of NWA right now is, you're damn right, we're going on our 74th year anniversary show. It's going to be taking place in St. Louis, Missouri, August 27th and 28th. And what a celebration it's going to be, because we got a brand new NWA World Heavyweight Champion in Trevor Murdoch. We just had the Always Ready event. You know, who knows what would have happened? Matt Cardona, our champion at the time, it was his pay-per-view. It was themed after him. Hell, I even ordered the turnbuckles that matched it for the guy. And then the arm injury happened. And then what was going to happen turned into a crazy four-way dance at the end of the show. Trevor Murdoch came up on top. And so that's where we are right now. We're building and we're growing. And right now, a lot of changes afoot, but also tradition. 74 years. It's a hell of a long time. It's older than I am. In fact, I hope I don't make it as a human being to 74 years, because that just sounds like the worst parts of my body are going to be acting up. And also, who the hell knows what kind of world we're going to live in right now. Yeah. I don't know if you guys follow that, but some questionable things going on where I'm from.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you guys, like, you're kind of pulling out some big guns too. We had Bully Ray popping up at Always Ready. So who knows what's on the table for that in NWA 74. Very exciting stuff going on over there.
No, I would agree with you completely. And I'm glad you find it exciting, because at the end of the day, I need people that aren't me, that are outside of the NWA, to feel what I'm feeling. That's important. Get invested in it. We've got NWA USA on Saturdays, NWA Power on Tuesdays, new talent appearing. We just had Thrillbilly Silas debut the other day with Pollo Del Mar. I got to tell you, man, that guy's a heater, as they call him. That man could kick some ass, but also, it's love's love. I like that. We've got a couple other things going on any day. Sam Shaw's back in the NWA right now. Yep. A man whose actions speak volumes and his words very, 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 very limited. But I got to be honest with you, as I've been with the company since everything started building back up under William Patrick Corrigan. We purchased it, and we're just hitting our stride again. When COVID hit, we took a hiatus. Unfortunately, it took all this time to get the momentum back, but the momentum's back. We just literally had a call about where we're going in 2023. And I could tell you that I'm excited for it, as not only a guy involved in it, but also as a fan. And the sky's the limit. Who knows what's going to happen?
Super exciting stuff. Can't wait to track all the build up to 74 and beyond. I think there's exciting things on the horizon. Yeah. But we're here to debate 3 topics.
Yeah.
You know the deal. 10 to 15 minutes a piece on each topic. It's going to be fun.
So what happens if we all are in agreement? That's not going to be a debate. And got to be honest with you, I feel like a lot of my opinions on this are going to be really rational. And if you're a rational human being, you're not going to be arguing with me.
Well, so the paperclip's not real rational, so we'll see what happens.
Paperclip looks like he actually shoved one into a light socket when he was a kid, but that's beside the point.
With my tongue.
He's ingesting all that carbon black. Okay. And that's called a callback, ladies and gentlemen, that you weren't here for earlier, but heck, what are we going to do? All right, so question number 1, let's do this damn thing.
Let's get it. First question of the night. Jim Ross, Bobby Heenan, Tony Schiavone. You can only have one of these broadcasters in their prime to commentate with a partner of your choosing that's not mentioned here. So who are
Easy.
You picking?
Who wants to go first?
Go ahead. I picked Jim Ross.
I'm Okay, we are not going to agree on these things. Never mind, the debate's going to happen.
I picked Jim Ross in his prime, and it's for the partner that I picked to go with him.
Okay.
Jim Ross being one of the greatest play-by-plays. I paired him up with somebody who I don't think got enough time with Jim Ross, which was Paul Heyman. So
that's actually a good team.
That's right up Kyle's alley right there.
Well, I mean, you're taking a flavor I don't like and adding a flavor I do like in Paul Heyman. So that's why I'm like, you know what? He's going to sweeten this pot for me, so I don't have to listen to Slobberknocker and all these other things about him pissing himself. So you said in prime, before Jim Ross was all about, I like to wear darks because I got to use the bathroom.
So what's your beef with Jim Ross and Slobberknocker phrasing, Kyle?
It's just Jim Ross, and if I ever end up in AEW, that's going to bite me in the ass. Is what it is. I help run the NWA, so I hope there's no reason for me to ever end up somewhere else. Jim Ross just always seemed kind of angry to me and kind of bitter. And he's got that old man screaming at the clouds thing going on every now and then. And there's a part of me, even back in the day, I was never a Jerry Lawler as a commentator thing because it was always distraction. Oh, the puppies and this, that, and blah, blah, blah. It just always kind of made me cringe. Even when I was a teenager, it made me cringe. And, Jim Ross in WCW back in the day with Shivani and things like that and all that team, I could handle that. But most people would say that the Ross Stride era, where it's like, this is what people think, is the Attitude Era. Cowboy hat era Jim Ross, if you would. And it just never connected with me. I was a Joey Styles fan and everything like that. And I'm going to tell you, you said your choice. I'm going to give you mine right now. Bobby Heenan, because I love the smart, the quick wit, this, that, the paying attention, all this stuff. And my boy who helps run the National Wrestling Alliance with me, Joe Galley, because he is an amazing commentator. And also I know who he is as a human being. He could roll at the punches. He could do this. And I feel like those two would have amazing chemistry. And that's right from my heart. I'm not trying to kiss his ass because I work with him. I legit, every time I see him, go like, man, you're so good at your job. Oh, it upsets me.
He's a classic straight man commentator. And a Bobby Heenan would play perfect off of him.
Exactly. But if you ever are at one of our tapings and you could hear him when the cameras are not rolling, you were in for a wake-up call. Because I might look like I'm a thug that's ready to do some damage, but I'm really the sweetest man you've ever met. He looks like the sweetest, cleanest cut person ever, and then he'll talk about like taking out in the streets and doing things to you. And I feel like that attitude with Bobby Heenan would play off very, very well.
Heenan's great, man.
If the question wouldn't have been worded the way it was, I think my dream combo would be Jim Ross and Bobby Heenan. I don't think they've ever worked together. I think that angry old man in Jim and that just quick-witted smartass in Bobby would have been like gold, because Bobby would have called him on his bitterness. But since the question's worded the way it is, I would say Jim Ross and Jesse Ventura.
Minnesota.
There was a brief moment in the early 90s where they worked together a little bit, but Jesse Ventura is so underrated as like a colorful heel commentator.
You know something, McMahon? Whenever I'm looking at that ring, I'm thinking everybody every day, he's cheating. But that's beside the point. Minnesota.
Exactly.
I can't believe that guy became a politician. And then he showed up on the first day, suit and tie, and people were like, "Wait, we hired you as a joke." And he's like, "No, this is a career that's." But now, fast forward, he's talking about black helicopters in the sky and all these conspiracy theories. So,
black helicopters.
Yeah, he is. Man, he was in Predator. A guy in Predator, with some of the dialogue he spoke, and then to go on to be a governor, it's pretty wild.
Like, what's your campaign promise? I ain't got time to bleed.
Yeah, exactly.
I think in this day and age, actually, people would be like, make him president then. I just like the campaign promise. This can't turn out bad.
Man, I actually, my answer was Jim Ross and Jesse Ventura. Yeah, just mainly because I wasn't aware they even worked together. I know Jim and Bobby worked very briefly, like a cup of coffee when Bobby was on the way out of WWF, and Jim was, of course, coming just in. Just very briefly here and there.
I think JR and Jesse, I'm wanting to say, was like a cup of coffee in like 91, 92. They did some shows in WCW together.
Yeah.
By the way, Joe, my question that I'm bringing to the table a little bit here, I feel like plays into this exactly. And I'm going to bring up this conversation, how the three of you picked Jim Ross as an example of where this is going. So here's a little teaser.
And really, honestly, like whenever Jim and you were right, Jim, like he's yelling at the clouds, like you said, get off my lawn, type of person. In fact, I had somebody tell me they met him in Vegas just to pass Double or Nothing, and they were sitting there saying like, oh yeah, I met you at this show, blah blah blah. He goes, I don't care, son, just take the damn picture.
I think one of the things that also I'm biased on is that maybe if you're thinking of just like the way this person was proposed to you on camera, like that version of this person.
Right.
But I'm a big advocate of like becoming a fan of people for who they are. And then all of a sudden you get invested in them as a wrestler because there might be something where like all of a sudden I'm a big fan of that person. Right. Inversely, there's been plenty of times where everybody in fandom has realized, there's a reason why they say don't meet your idols.
Oh yeah.
Because it turns out a lot of people you think are amazing are end up being not the most pleasant human beings to spend time with. And I think every time I hear something with him, like that's not on camera, like interviews and things like that, I'm just like, he's not somebody I would hang out with.
Well, yeah, it's became a thing even on his own podcast where Conrad refers to it as Red Ass JR. Anytime he's in a cantankerous mood, it's Red Ass JR.
I couldn't do it. He's got a wealth of information. He's been everywhere in the world. He's lived a life that few could dream of in this business. But I'm still just like, I can't get past the whole, he's not somebody I would chill with. And I think that's why I'd step back.
Yeah. He definitely seems old school. Like old, right. And yeah, I don't want to say he's commentating for AEW, so you can't really say he's against the new generation of wrestling, but I do think he is like 1 foot in that type of ideology that we hear from people like the Jim Cornettes and that are hard on the evolution of pro wrestling.
Well, one of the other things that I think is I'm also super biased because being somebody in the business, I also look at like, is this person going to be my boss at some point? You think about, he was head of talent relations at WWE for many, many years. Yep. And there's a part of me that goes like, Jesus, I don't know if I would have been able to work for this guy without him firing me or hating me or burying me or this, that. So it's another thing where I'm like, I look at him as a person that was in leadership. And when I've seen, I'm like, oof, I always like to get along with my bosses. And I don't think I would get along with him as a boss. So
yeah.
That's just me.
I do have a backup pick, and since Chad already kind of threw this out, this is gonna be kind of this is out there, but because I love Bobby Heenan, all right.
Okay.
And I will have to say that this person paired with Bobby Heenan, I think would do well with because of the things we see with him currently, with a certain individual he's with. Michael Cole, I feel like has greatly improved with Pat McAfee. And now if he could get away with all right, I got to plug Snickers. Now I got to plug this and do, I think a Michael Cole, you take a 1997 Michael Cole, pair him with Bobby Heenan. I think it could be pretty fun.
I think Michael Cole's incredibly underrated. You have no idea how hard it is to do a job with somebody screaming in your ear and telling you to plug this and do that. He is, and the thing you're going to find out is a lot of people that are involved in like broadcasting and things like that have some sort of position backstage as well, because who is going to push your product and the points that need to be pushed better than somebody that's invested in it and is relying on it.
Point. Yeah.
And Cole is somebody who literally is any given day, he just goes in, can convey the point of the story that's going on, hit whatever thing they're promoting, pitch everything. he's got decades of experience at this point, and the guy is so good at his job. No wonder you have to go through him to get hired there at this point for that stuff. So,
I mean, he's arguably, you could say he is the best
of his generation,
best air traffic controller working today as far as like just managing the traffic. But for me, God, he is fucking boring, man. Like,
that's the only thing. But I think Bobby could pull out some of his personality.
Yeah,
and I think Pat McAfee's done a pretty good job with doing that too. But I mean, you compare Pat McAfee to Bobby Heenan. I mean, that's
Bobby Heenan and Excalibur could be fun.
That's where I thought that Paperclip was going with that, by the way. He's like, this was a little outlandish. And I was like, oh, God, it's going to be Excalibur.
Bobby Heenan would be roasting him for wearing that mask. At every moment, he would be roasting.
You got a growth on your face there? Is that why you're trying to? That's fine. I know what you're hiding.
And
I can all the time.
I can just hear Heenan, too, with him saying all the moves.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's an encyclopedia of moves. I can just hear Heenan just be like, what?
By the way, I just looked up at Sneed real quick, and I was like, holy shit, is that Michael Elgin?
I should change my name on there.
Be less problematic.
I think, I mean, we each kind of went Jim Ross and Heenan, but like Tony Schiavone, I feel like he's one of those kind of like,
he's a utility player. You can put him with anybody.
And he's underrated. Yeah. Like, I feel like he kind of got his love when he came back to AEW, but for a while, for like over a decade, he was just forgotten, 20 years.
Yeah.
And I thought he was like a voice of a generation, man. If you were a kid who grew up on WCW, that was that kind of like, he was the rock of that commentary team, whether it was him and Mongo, him and Bobby Heenan,
Tenay,
him and Larry Zbyszko, him and Tenay. I feel like he was always there. He's, like you said, Kyle, he's a good utility player.
You could put him with anybody. And by the way, Mike Tenay, I used to love back in the 96 era where they just brought him in only for pay-per-view cruiserweight matches.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd be like, Tenay, what do you say? Like in Mexico, they wear masks to hide their identities. This is part of the culture there. And I'm just thinking like, but it was one of those things where you look back and you're going like, you had to explain to people how to walk.
Right.
That's called a hurricanrana. It's a move that actually wasn't. And like I learned all about Conan being a soap opera star and all these other things to the point where Conan has been to NWA shows before on camera and stuff. Actually, last time when we were in St. Louis for 73, he was there. And Salinaro and I were talking to him. And all I could think of was Tony Schiavone in my head telling me all the backstory about Conan being a soap opera actor and like cutting his hair and this, that, and being Mexico's Hulk Hogan. That's all I could think of while I was talking to him. And I know that all Sal could think of was Arriba La Raza. Yeah.
Oh, man. That was a fun question. Man.
Yeah.
Anybody have any final thoughts? We'll move on to the next question.
I just, again, entire generation, Jim Ross. He makes you question if things were as good as you remember or if we're all just hung on a little. Question number 3, following up later. Going back to that tease.
Question number 2. Was wrestling in the past really as good as we remember it, or has nostalgia tricked us into thinking the past is better than it really was?
Oh, hold on. I thought that was going to be question number 3. Never mind. We're right here, right now.
We're here. This is the question that you brought to
live, pal.
Easy breezy on this one right here. We were just talking about it. We all, the older we get, focus on the things that brought us joy when we were developing as a human being. And as much as we want to think, oh, we're still growing and this, that, and the other thing, it's very hard once you hit 30s to really change who you are and what you think and what you like. We latch on to those things in our teenage years, music, movies, entertainment, all the things when life seemed so short and every little moment was so much more impactful because you weren't thinking in 70 years, this is going to be this little tiny thing. Instead, it's this gap and it feels so great. I fell in love with wrestling with ECW. It was the first promotion where I was like, I'm now a hardcore wrestling fan. I used to watch WWF and I'd get the tapes and everything like that. And even then, you'd get a Survivor Series from the 80s or early 90s. and there was so much thrown together talent on there. But you'd be like, yes, I do want to know what's going to happen when the Bushwhackers meet the natural disasters, and they're on across the ring, and who's going to get eliminated than this random person. And you think about it now, and you're just like, why was I getting so excited for what was the mid card of that?
Right.
Like, you watch main companies now, and everything is a competitive match. It's very hard to think this person's this unstoppable force. Back in the day, we used to watch like Superstars and things like that, and you'd see somebody you're never going to see before in your life get destroyed in 2 minutes by somebody, and you're going to be like, Sid Justice is the master and the ruler of the world. Yes, I agree. And even the ECW thing, I remember thinking this is the greatest thing ever. They're using real music. Oh my God, every match is amazing. This, that. You watch it back though, and if you watched it on the network, it didn't have the music, and you're like, okay, this isn't hitting the same emotional resonance I had with me. And then you also realize most of the matches are clip shows. You're not watching a whole match. You're watching a 3-minute segment of a 25-minute thing. It's the best of for everything. And it was basically just hitting the emotional points that you needed. Same thing like when you go back and watch a Nitro. You know, there's a lot of cool moments. But in general, there's a lot of bad moments. Yep. It's like anything else. We remember the positives of this thing, this nostalgia that we have, and we make it better than it really was. And I think we've all had the moment where you show somebody something where you're like, oh, you want to see something amazing? Look at this. And they're like, it's all right. But to you, it's like this powerful, impactful moment. And people shit on modern wrestling like WWE, where they're like, oh, I can't even watch it. The truth of the matter is that there is a segment for everybody on that program. You are not going to like 3 hours. You are going to like 20 minutes here and there. And it's your job to have to sit through that to find it. And there's an entire generation of kids that are living the exact same way we did when we watched our stuff back in the day, who are picking and only remembering the good times. And that becomes the most amazing thing ever. It's not just wrestling, it's life in general. Everybody always thinks that the best things are past and nothing good could come in the future and things like that. I mean, that's why you should not have people in their 70s making choices that are going to affect entire generations in the world at this point, because they already don't have a concept of what people need in this day and age, because they're stuck with, like, in my time, this was the best stuff ever. And there's nothing wrong with being nostalgic and loving things. But I go back and I try to watch an episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I'm like, man, I can't believe I like this. He-Man, can't believe I like that. There's all sorts of things. The only thing that has stood up in time where I've watched it back and said, this is still just bangs, comic books from the 80s, because that shit was being written for people that were well above my age when I was reading it. And now I'm like, oh, this stuff still holds up. But I really think that we have this whole idea that wrestling, like the whole eras, you know, the Attitude Era, or maybe you were a part of the Hogan era or whatever, or like, you know, WCW when Flair was at the top of his game, that all this stuff is the end all be all. It's not. It was just something that triggered and hit us on an emotional level because it's all we knew at the time.
Yeah, and I think when I definitely think nostalgia makes things in all walks of life seem better than they are today.
Yeah. 500 Days of Summer is an entire movie based off of that.
Right. Like when you put those rose-colored glasses on, typically when you think back to those times, you're remembering the high spots. And you're romanticizing this era. When you really go back and dig into it, there was a lot of shit in all of that. Even in movies, TV, all of that. Like, I think
Goonies and Princess Bride are two movies that still hold up for me, but there's a lot that doesn't. Monster Squad, kind of iffy.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with wrestling. Like, there are those segments from the past that you go back and you're like, man, that was really, really good. But that's what that's what, you know, with a movie, you know, if a movie, you go back and watch a movie, Princess Bride, any like Taxi Driver, any of those old films that still you watch it and there's a visceral connection to it. That's why they're classics. You know, you go throw a Billy Madison on, there might be a lot of jokes that don't land like they did when you were 13 years old. You know what I mean?
Austin being angry with the Intercontinental title, throwing that shit into the water, being like, check your pager, all that stuff. That stuff transcends and feels still real to me.
Right.
But you throw in a thing like, I'm going to chop at the pee-pee. I'm like, I thought this was funny at the time, but I'm like, this does nothing for me.
Right.
I don't believe that person's really about to get their penis cut off with a samurai sword. But I do believe that Steve Austin really is going to steal something, break that shit, and start a fist fight.
Yep.
Well, so that's the point I was going to bring up, because and this has to do with particularly with wrestling, but as a kid, as you grow up, you get worked, quote unquote, worked very easily, right? Like you mentioned, like, yes, I believe that Sid was the master of the world, right?
Yep.
I believe that the Papa Shango was a voodoo specialist, and it all depends on where you were as a kid. If you grew up in the ruthless aggression era, yes, I'm gonna buy into Batista just being this big, huge power. Nobody could beat him, and it all depends on where you grew up at. As wrestling fans get older, guess what happens? They become more jaded. They become smarter, and they don't take in the being work factor, which is kind of where I'm at, with my wrestling fandom. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. Like, just work me. People get too caught up in like, oh, is this a shoot? Oh, this is a work.
Sal Renaro watches wrestling with his son, and he's like, it's the best thing ever because I see it through fresh eyes.
Yeah.
But there's also times where he'll point out something that I'll be like, oh shit, I'm unfortunately rubbing off on him. MJF quitting, asking to be fired in AEW, whatever the hell's going on with that. His son looked at me and he goes, if he's got such a problem, why'd they announce him as having the microphone on the show? Like, why are they putting him in front of the camera?
Exactly.
And then Sal's like, God damn it. Like, my kid's ruined too. He's like, why doesn't he just jump the guardrail and start interrupting people? And he's like, kid, I'm sorry.
Welcome to the biz, kid.
Boney, you bring up a good point, though, because I was about to say, I think like nostalgia is tethered to jadedness. So it's like, as you age and you learn the world more, and this is everything, like with a film, that it's not, when you're a kid, you're fucking bought in. Let's go away from
suspension of disbelief. I'm lost in the narrative. I can't wait.
Exactly. Yep. Like, let's go away from the kayfabe of pro wrestling and just in a movie, man. When you sat down to watch a movie when you were a little kid, that was a world. You didn't know that these were people saying lines from a script, and there's a camera crew and a lighting crew and a sound crew. You're just disappearing into the world. Same thing with wrestling. You're losing yourself. And as you get old and you find out, oh, there's all these people that come together to make this movie, or there's bookers in the back that are planning out these scripts. These guys really don't hate each other. As you learn that, it losing that ability to lose yourself in the moment, I think, brings on the jadedness of today. But at the same time you're doing that, there's a parallel of being nostalgic for those early times. But if you go back and watch those with the jaded eyes of today, you're going to pick it apart just as easy as you do now.
But my favorite thing to do is to get stoned with edibles and just forget the world and just watch things and be like, yes, I do believe a man can fly. It's serious. It gets that little nagging thing. We were watching on Netflix some sort of kind of like TED Talk thing. I think it was, or HBO Go, Atlas of the Heart or something like that. It was basically a TED Talk about communication and all this other stuff like that. And while we're watching it, all of a sudden I go like, only a few people in the audience, they'll pass the microphone around, talk to people in the audience. But every now and then I notice that somebody had a lapel mic on. And I'd be like, oh, that person, they planned on asking questions. Yeah. Like that person has something to do with this.
Yeah.
And I can't even in real life, if I'm completely clean and there's nothing in me, watch a documentary or a TED Talk and not go like, oh, there's more to this from a production standpoint. So there's something, so who is this and why? And then I get lost. And then next thing you know, I'm not invested anymore. I'm pulled out of it. So yeah, you're right. There is something to do with that, where it's that childlike wonderment where you get detached. And next thing you know, you're like, I just can't put myself in that thought process to enjoy this for what it was.
Right.
know,
And that's
when-
probably the nostalgia jaded. Yes. In this day and age, you're biased and you look at things in a different way. But back then, you remember the feeling you had as a kid. And you're like, yes, this is happening.
Yeah.
you know, we went to a local indie, and Chad and I went to a local indie show, and I mentioned to him there was a match going on, and I'm not saying any names of who was in it, but it was local stars, and it wasn't that great. But this kid, and I looked at Chad and I was like, man, what I wouldn't give to be seeing it the way he's seeing it right now, because he was losing his shit over these local indie wrestlers.
Totally bought in.
100% bought in. And right before that, Chad and I were sitting back there going, man, that looks bad.
Yeah.
That
And
looks really bad.
3 rows up, this kid's standing up on his seat, jeering at the heels, like
Screaming.
just totally no carefree, no inhibitions, you know. And I see kids
And
like
everybody,
that. I'm like,
all the adults around him are loving it.
yeah,
That he's into it the way he is.
Yeah.
'Cause he was bought in.
he was really bought in.
I think when people connect on that level, it really it doesn't happen all the time, but when it lands, it lands. I became a big Shinsuke Nakamura fan when he was in New Japan, like the Bombay version of him, like Intercontinental. Because I felt like this person is who he is. Like I bought in. I believed when he'd hit that, I'd be like, yes, he'd kind of quirky and everything like that. I brought it up earlier today. We just introduced a new talent, Thrillbilly Silas, and I believe I've talked to him, and when I watch him in the ring, I'm like, this dude is. I believe.
Yeah.
I believe we have a weird gimp that is Sinister Minister's punish down that he found underneath an underpass that was. He did $5 for unspeakable acts, and he bites his toenails and all these other things. Like, I believe that. And when I see things like that, I go, yes.
Yeah.
But then there's other times where I'm just like, you're not selling me on this, guys. So yeah, there's still hope is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that in 20 years, there's going to be kids that remember something where they're like, oh my God, Luchasaurus was awesome. Like, there's going to be stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, that's great. And I hope for that because damn it, I need wrestling to keep on going on because we're on year 74 at the NWA. I need to make it to 100 at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually going to bring that up too. It's like that. I sometimes regret like watching these, Dark Side of the Rings and Beyond the Mats and whatever else. Where I've kind of like, oh, okay, so this is heels, this is your faces, this is this, that. Because then today, I would think, man, Luchasaurus is a great dinosaur.
Yeah.
I love that attitude. Luchasaurus is a great dinosaur. You make me want to be a better person right now, Paperclip.
I'll try.
Do you guys think that is it possible to be a fan on that level? Is it because
That's why I do drugs. Yes, it is. You just can't do it sober.
but like, for instance, like I moved to Los Angeles for a while, lived there, worked in the entertainment industry. I PA'd on all sorts of reality shows. You want to talk about having the kayfabe blown apart, like all of that is scripted. None of it is real. And, I played the Hollywood game trying to get into writing and stuff. And you get very jaded by playing that game and having a lot of non-creative people tell creative people how to be. And at a certain point, you almost get bitter on the movies you see and the things you watch. And it's kind of similar. We're talking about nostalgia and being jaded. And I was nostalgia for the films of the past. They don't make them like they used to. But then there was a moment where I was kind of like, you have to remember why you got into this in the first place. I think that's the key of not being too jaded of a fan. And just to tie it back into pro wrestling, like, even though we know more from the Dark Side of the Rings, the Beyond the Mats, like J-Bone brought up, even though we know more, and it's very easy to pick shit apart, like, oh, I don't like how they did that. Oh, that guy's not getting over. Whatever you want to do being a hardcore fan, I feel like even though it's probably impossible to ever have that feeling that you had when you were a child, it's something that as a good fan, you should strive to remember why you were a fan in the first place. I think that's very important.
Yeah. Sure. You know, when we were kids, you know, we wrote, you know, the thing that that I remember is going to rent WWF tapes. You know, the content of that tapes was, you know, TL Hopper versus Abe Knuckleball Schwartz.
Hey, but I'm not going to let you disparage a good God name of TL Hopper.
I was going to say Abe Knuckleball Schwartz. I saw wrestle in person at Torrington High School in my hometown back in the day against 1-2-3 Kid. And I absolutely fell in love with Abe Knuckleball Schwartz. He lost, and then he challenged 1-2-3 Kid to a rematch later on in the night, and then lost again. Loved it.
And it sounds like some of the videos that we used to rent. But that's the thing, like going to rent those videos, man. That's
you never knew what you were going to get. And like wrestle, whatever the frick they were like. They all had those weird names. They were just a mishmash of tapes for the Coliseum home video.
Yeah,
Wrestle Battle '93. And you're like, what? And it's like, oh, Bret Hart's on the cover with a headlock on Mr. Perfect. Okay.
So,
all right. Anybody have any final thoughts? We'll move on to our final question.
Let's go.
I guess the whole premise of this, guys, is just remember, you know, the things you love, don't hold them so precious. You know, there's always new things around the corner, and appreciate what you have at any given time and learn new things and grow as a person, because nostalgia sometimes holds you back. And there's still a lot of cool shit today that I get excited for constantly. Not only because it's people that I have personal relationships with being super successful all over the wrestling business, but also sometimes I just see something I'm like, man, look at that. That was cool.
Yep.
Yeah. The one thing I would say for me is just don't be so quick to rush through everything. I think in this kind of social media age with a very short attention span, I think fans of today they want to just get to the next thing, like, and realize the special moments you're in sometimes and really soak them up, because eventually some of these wrestlers that you're booing off the screen or that you say have X-Pac heat or whatever you want to call it, and you want them gone, like eventually they will be gone, and you'll be one of those fans looking back to, man, remember when he was there? Like, appreciate the guys you have and the special moments you have now, and don't let it become nostalgia.
I tell that to people I work with all the time. There's no shame in taking a moment and appreciating the ridiculousness of what you're involved in at any given time, to the point where some people will shit on it. I don't care. At one of our pay-per-views recently, we had Mick Foley there, and I got to do a segment with Mick Foley. And I literally made a comment. I'm like, Christmas is right around the corner, but my present just came in. I can't believe I'm ready to say this. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the hardcore legend himself, Mick Foley. Like, that was all legit. Why hide the fact that I'm like, this is fucking cool. Like, there's no reason. And there's people that win championships and are like, oh, I don't want to make it a thing. But when you get involved in something, to be able to say, like, I'm doing the things that people I grew up with that I looked at as role models got to accomplish, there's no shame in being like, we got to take a picture right now. This is cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Take the pictures, man.
Take all
because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, I used to be a wrestler, and I didn't put all the effort in and everything like that. And then I was out of the business for a long time. And, you know, I definitely regretted not taking advantage and appreciating when things arose. Like, I'm a broadcaster and I help run a professional wrestling company. But when I broke into the business, do you know who trained me to be a wrestler? Brian Danielson.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet here I was just taking that for granted. You know, I bump into people all the time that have become legends in the business that I worked with and just shot the shit. And instead of being like, oh, you know, we're all cool and this is that and everything, I was just like, whatever. I'm just trying to get through the day. This is just work. I don't really want to roll around in the ring today. I'm feeling lazy. Or I wouldn't want to wrestle tonight because ring crew was really tiring and we just drove 16 hours. Or this, that, and the other thing. Instead of being like, this is history I'm a part of.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Damn it. I should just sit back and be like, life's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, man. You were in Ring of Honor during, like, I mean, that hot time that everyone looks back to.
It's so weird to see like Seth Rollins now and Sami Zayn and, you know, Kevin Steen, Brian, Austin Aries was all over the place, Samoa Joe, Cesaro, Ken with us for a little while. It's like the Briscoes. There's literally was just this whole legacy of people that will imprint an entire generation that I just shoot the shit with and just be like, I could learn, I could network, I could build on this, but I was just like, I'm a pretty boy. I'm just going to enjoy myself and try to get laid.
So I guess to bring it back to that question, Kyle, are you nostalgic for those times?
No, I'm regretful.
Really?
Yeah, I'm regretful. And I always tell young talent in this day and age, like everything in life is effort and relationships. You could have the most prestigious accomplishments of anybody existing in life. You could be the best person at doing this thing. But if you're not in the right position for that to be seen, acknowledged, and exploited, you're never going to be anybody but just the guy who secretly is the best at that. And so it's really important to, be capable of doing what you need to do at any given moment. That's the preparation. But also, you never know who you're going to bump into that you can make an impression on or just a connection with, that down the road somebody needs, hey, so-and-so, you need that? I know a guy, actually. And then next thing you know, that's how I ended up in the position I am today. My producer in the NWA when I came into this was my old producer in Ring of Honor when I became a broadcaster. And he said, hey, are you interested in getting back in the wrestling business? And I said, yes, please. He said, cool. I already told William Patrick Corrigan you'd be up for it. Adam Pearce is one of my mentors who's now on SmackDown on WWE because he was the guy who said, Kyle, you're the shits as a wrestler, but you can talk. I want to make you a broadcaster. And then the sky was the limit from there. You never know the relationships or the people or the skills you're going to need at any given time. So it's very important to just don't give up, keep on putting in the work. And then one day, who knows what's going to happen. And also don't feel bad if it never happens. Yeah. Literally, the one thing that's guaranteed in life is we're all going to die at some freaking point in time. Right. So it's up to us to make sure that before that happens, we at least are content with ourselves and what we do, or have a positive impact on the world around us and the people around us and being able to affect them in a way that makes them go like, I feel like I'm better because I knew this person. That's all you can ask for. Don't be a shitty human being. Make sure that whatever's making you feel good isn't destructive to the world around you or the people around you, and just get through your life. If you can do anything more than that, you are already doing better than most people ever will. I'm living a dream that as a fat kid growing up in Connecticut, I never thought I would be able to do. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. I went to ECW shows. I went to a fan fest, and I asked a question to Taz one day during a fan fest. He said, brother, you sound like one of us up here. You're really loud. And I was like, Taz thinks I'm loud. And then, and it's just one of those things where you never know what's going to happen. And I think it's always important, especially in a business. There's what, like 5,000 professional wrestlers in the world, maybe. There's not a lot of them. So to be anywhere where a random stranger might know you exist, or you are on a television program for even a year of your life, or you did this, that, or the other thing, you are already in the 1% of all those 5,000 people. Yep. And then the other thing is, and this is just anything involved entertainment. Usually it's a bunch of people that there's something in us that strives to have, like, I need something from the outside that gives me worth, or something like that, or whatever that is. There's a certain sort of brokenness to it. So the other thing you always got to realize is that when you're interacting with people that are doing anything on camera or anything, that's a real human being that has driving forces behind them that may be positive or negative. So they could be the biggest baby face on the camera, but they could be the saddest, most angry human being you've ever met. Inversely, you can see somebody that's just whipping ass and everything like that, and they're just like,
we lose him?
I think we lost him.
Oh, no. Just give it a second because I've seen him do this before.
There we go.
Unstable internet connection. But again, we literally have these magic devices that connect us to everywhere in the world. Oh my God, I thought, was there another Kyle Davis loading on the screen?
He's still talking and he's still thinking that it's a parallel universe.
But again, just put in the effort, build relationships, and then you never know if you put yourself out there and don't hold on to things and be all bottled up inside and be like, oh, life's not fair. This is never going to happen to me or anything. Just put yourself out there and something will connect with somebody. I don't know how this started, but I went on a real tirade, and I warned the audience at the beginning that I was going to go on a tangent. Question number 3. Let me get this back on board, guys.
That was great.
Question number 3.
Standing ovation.
Buy or sell Ric Flair wrestling one last match at 73 years old?
You know, if we were doing a real people's court, there would be things where you could perjure yourself and do all these other things in a real court of law. And to be honest with you, we had Flair with us at NWA 73. Who knows what's going to happen with the final Ric Flair match? Final, because again, people retire. Jim Crockett Promotions promoting this. We just had, Dave Crockett with us the other week. There's a lot of tangentials where I am a biased individual in this. But at the end of the day, regardless of if NWA is involved or whatever the hell goes on, Ric Flair has a heart condition. Ric Flair has a pacemaker in his chest. Ric Flair is somebody who has lived the best life for him that he could. Again, going back to that, who's to say if it was positive or negative on people around him or what that legacy really will be if you deep dive. But on paper, Ric Flair was one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. And one of the last things you want to do is, for nostalgia purposes, taint that legacy. I worked in Ring of Honor when we brought in Kenta was one of the big stars there, who now is still a big star in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And we also brought in Misawa. And Misawa was always one of those guys that I was a big fan of. And when I was working in Ring of Honor, Misawa, not in the States, but in a match in Japan, died in the middle of the ring. For whatever happened, be it heart, neck snapped, whatever really happened in that ring. A legend. His career was ended in the middle of that ring, and that legacy is something that people will always remember about that. And at the time, I knew one of the guys that was in the ring with him when he died, and he thought, oh my God, I'm going to get blamed for killing himself.
Right.
He literally was like, it was the most, you could see that it was a traumatic experience for him. As a human being, but also as a professional in the sport, to know like, okay, I'm now tangentially connected to this. Also, I witnessed this happen. Oh my God, this is horrifying. Rey Mysterio Jr. was in the ring with somebody who died. People keep on forgetting about that. The last thing you want to do is have a situation where somebody whose legacy is something that's so precious to us that we're looking past what really should be going on, which is, you got a health condition, this could happen, this, that. I don't even want to risk it. I'd rather remember Flair as he is than remember the worst case scenario that could happen. Is it going to happen? Probably not. This is just one of those things where I'm just being super thinking of the worst case scenario because it's happened before. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen again. But I'd rather remember Ric Flair as I remember him than, let's even go back. I can even give you an example. Here we go. Boom. Last WCW Nitro, Ric Flair, Sting, 2001. They're at the beach there. Flair's got a T-shirt on because he said he was ashamed of how he looked.
Yep.
For many, many years, that ruined the legacy of Ric Flair because he lost his confidence. He didn't believe in himself, and he portrayed that. The way it came off on camera was, Ric Flair's a shell of the person I know. It wasn't until years later that Hunter was able to get him to back and have that confidence and shit, and then Flair had this resurgence, had some of the greatest matches of his career.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then he went to TNA. And then, for better or for worse, he was there. And then he was a character and he had some matches and things like that, that either you were a big fan of or you weren't. And now this could rejuvenate his entire career. But let's be honest. Where do you go from here, even if you have one good match? And does he keep on doing it until he does? Shawn Michaels came out of retirement for like a $3 million payday in a tag team match. And everybody who saw that tag team match was like, man, imagine your legacy if you never came back for that one match.
Yeah.
Ric Flair has an amazing legacy that may have been tainted by what you were talking about, knowing a little bit more on there, Dark Side of the Ring and things like that. Who's to say I wasn't there? I don't know the facts of it and stuff like that. But the way it was presented was like, ooh, not good.
Right.
So is this an attempt to make people forget about that? Who knows? Who knows? I just want Ric Flair to be happy with Ric Flair.
Right.
And the fact that he's doing this match makes me think maybe he's not. And I hope he knows that he doesn't have to put himself on the line and do a bunch of dumb shit to get people to respect him, because they already respected him. Mick Foley at a certain point didn't need to fall off of tall things in order for people to think that man is talented and I respect the shit out of him.
Right.
At a certain point, you have to just accept, this is my body of work. This is what I've shown the people. Love it or not, this is who I am. And, I just don't want anything bad to come of it. And again, probably nothing will, but who's to say?
Yeah, I think
pass. I'm going to pass.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to buy it. Just
tell me. I'm sorry. I went on a tirade there, and I would love to hear the other side of that coin.
No, I'm going to buy it. I do think that this match is it's a selfish gimme that only a legacy can allow. Like, the legacy he had allows him to make this decision for himself. Now, you brought up a point that kind of made me second guess buying it, just from the aspect of the guy in the ring with him, what that would do to the guy with him if something were to happen. That's a selfish act, and that makes me kind of second guess it. But at the
who's his opponent?
Have they announced
it? It hasn't been announced yet.
Okay, so but also, like, this guy's 73. He's a grown man. He's more than a grown man.
He can make his own choices.
I'm sure there are all these precautions in place of how the match is going to be laid out. But like you said, Kyle, anything can happen. Worst case scenario, he could be dead in that ring. But I would venture to say, if you asked Ric Flair, and again, a lot of selfishness in this, but if you were to ask Ric Flair, what's the best way for you to go out?
I was going to bring that
on his shield, in the ring, doing what he said in his ESPN 3, what was the E60 documentary they did on him?
Yeah.
When he said, I wasn't a great father, but I was the greatest pro wrestler. Like, he puts this almost as, you always see, I'm a father first. He knows that
wrestling's first.
Wrestling was his life.
He is living the life of the wrestler.
Exactly. To this day. So for me, like, I get it, man. I love Ric Flair, but I do not want to see him die in the ring. I do think, just to be kind of dark, I do think there's a certain poeticness to that. Like, for a wrestler of that stature to go out in the ring, I mean, fuck, man, you write the book, you film the movie, that is the way it ends. Look at the wrestler. You were there, Kyle.
We did. We filmed that in New Jersey. Yeah.
The Ram goes out in the ring, like, it is a very storybook ending. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I don't want it to happen, but I think he's earned the right. If he wants to go in one more time, I'll buy it. I'll support it. And that promo he cut that they released 3 or 4 days ago was on fire. He definitely seems like he's up for this. And he's 73. I'm not expecting a tour de force, but I think it'll be a fun little spectacle.
I'm going to buy it as well, as long as this is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, last time I think I was on here, we did our little round robin where we buy something. I actually sold it at that time, but we didn't really know, like, it hadn't been announced or anything like that. Just the Jay Lethal stuff, videos were kind of coming out and things like that. So I think it could be done safely. And to me, it's not like his son-in-law Conrad. It's not like him. He's like, I got a lot of money. Let's go and make a show.
Yeah.
It's been planned out. It's been thought about, and I say that because there's a lot of people involved in this, and I know another thing with it being his son-in-law, he's going to take care of him. He's going to make sure the proper precautions are being made. Make sure, like, all right, look, pops, go make sure we're going to get this doctor. Make sure you can actually do this before we start shelling out dollars and things like that. Conrad's, I think he's a pretty level-headed person, Ultimately, I feel like again, like I think it's it's up to him whether or not what he wants to do. Um, am I going to be purchasing the pay per view? Probably not. To be honest with you. However, I'm buying it for if this is what Ric Flair wants to do, let him go do it because he's earned the right. He's Ric Flair. I wish he would have retired and not been it in 2008. With the I'm sorry, I love you. It was a beautiful ending, but it didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
And that's why I said this could be potentially kind of saving that moment, so to speak. And maybe that's what why he wants to do. To me, with watching that promo, he's out there to prove everybody wrong.
I think that's the biggest thing for him. I think that's what a lot of this is proving. I think the last match he had before this was that showing with Hulk Hogan, that god awful showing between the two of them where they were just a bloody mess.
Yeah.
And then everything that's come out, and I think I'm buying it. I'm buying it, and I'm buying it for him for the reason that I think he knows. I think he knows what to do. I think Conrad's going to take care of him in there. I don't think he's going to let it.
Conrad's a smart man. He's damn good at what he does, and also a hell of an interviewer. So
I think we get he gets thrown off the top rope. We get a tour of the greatest hits. A couple of the we get a figure four. I don't think he's going to be doing much. I think it's all.
We're not going to get a 60-minute Broadway.
Yeah, I don't think we're.
Better not.
I don't think we're getting a buckle. I don't think he's buckle.
Yeah,
he might take a punch and fall face first.
Yeah, we'll probably get that.
We'll get that. But I think this, I buy it just for him. If this is the last one and this is how he wants to, cement a legacy, I buy it for him.
That still kind of upsets me because it still sounds, whether or not, again, we all just hear what we want to hear, but it sounds like a lot of the push for this and people's interest is just as a, like, ooh, I just want to see if it's going to be good or not, or this, that, or that. It's not for the legacy. It's for I kind of just want to see what happens. And it's not in a way where people are like, it's going to be the greatest thing ever and it's going to be the perfect end to an era. People are like, I kind of just want to know what happens. It's a curiosity.
Yeah.
And I hate the fact that somebody who's done so much in their career has been resorting to basically being a curiosity.
Yeah. The thing I would say, because I was worried when they brought back Stone Cold at WrestleMania about the legacy, how Shawn Michaels came back for that Saudi show. I think pretty kind of put a stain on his legacy. But the only reason I don't bring up the legacy thing with Ric Flair is he's already stained his legacy.
Yeah, he's already
so many times. Like going to TNA. I mean, like you said, J-Bone, he had the perfect storybook ending with that match with Michaels at Mania. But now it's like maybe they can use this to put a button on it. And it's done by Conrad family, who's going to try and make it an even bigger deal thematically than it is. Like I think he's going to try and make it be this like button on a career because he's sullied his reputation and his legacy a lot in different ways. So I'm not as concerned about this last match kind of putting a stain on his legacy as much.
I don't like it is what it is, but I don't like all the merch grab surrounding it. Yeah, I know they're trying to make bucks, whatever. They have the different little wrestling figure and the this and the shirt, and you can buy that. And that's wrestling. I get it, but if you're doing it for the last match, do it for the last match. Whether or not you have other people in the card, that's fine. Do it for the last match. That's my only thing, I guess. I'm a little hang up in it, and we don't know his opponent. And not that it really matters, but I think it's almost kind of telling at this point. We're about almost 3 or 4 weeks out, and it's all we know is it's Ric Flair's last match.
Right.
I mean, I'm not even going to go there because the truth of the matter is, if somebody helps run a wrestling company, sometimes you're trying to figure out things up to the very last minute. So it's just a matter of, people get sick, people fall out, somebody's contract come up, this, that, and the other thing. So you never know the inner workings of that. So there's probably a lot of backstage stuff going on there and everything, and the nuance and stuff. But do I think the show is going to be great? I'm sure it will be. I'm sure the production value is going to be fantastic. It's going to have this great feel and retro and everything like that. There's no doubt about that. It's just, I just wish there was a way of driving this narrative without Ric Flair having to wrestle again. That's all.
Yeah.
I can see that. All right.
Wow, what a downer this ended on. That's why we should have not saved this for last, guys.
Well, we do have a round robin to wrap it up. So
little round robin, no debating, just a simple answer. Maybe you can give a little bit to it. No big long debate. Simple question: will Bully Ray hold the 10 pounds of gold within the next 2 years? I say yes.
I say yes.
Man, I'm going to go no.
Kyle's thinking. We're putting him on the spot. He works for the company. If I'm putting
listen, does he even want to wrestle?
That's true too.
Yeah,
I'm not in his head. I don't know what the man wants. I don't know anything like that.
I think I listen to Busted Open Radio. I think he wants one more run. I think he's got in shape.
You think one more run?
One more run. I think he's in phenomenal shape.
I think he wants payback for getting put through that table. But I don't know if that goes farther than that.
Yeah.
I feel like a Bully focused is a title contender for a legacy stuff. And sky's the limit. I'd like to think that like people like Tom Latimer and Sam Shaw and people like that are going to have an opportunity to be put in title pictures going forward. Obviously not in the junior heavyweight division because those boys are not junior heavyweights. But I mean, like there's challengers for every division, and I feel like the names of tomorrow are the people that I really want to see focused on that. But Bully Ray, other than TNA, singles world champion? No. So there could be a part of that there. And, I guess we're going to have to see what happens and find out because 74 is right around the corner. And all I know is he got put through a table. And from what my understanding of that gentleman is, he does not suffer things like that kindly. So we'll see what happens. And then going forward, who's to say? I didn't think Matt Cardona was going to lose the title at Always Ready. I didn't think he was going to break his arm. I didn't think anything that happened during that was going to happen. So who's to say what's going to occur?
Love it.
I love it. I love it.
All right, man. Well, Kyle, we appreciate you stopping. We love having you come on, man.
Thanks. I like talking.
Always a great time. Let everybody know where they can find you, where they can find NWA.
If you're looking for me, my socials are, I believe it's right there on the screen, Kyle Davis, ATL. That's Twitter and Instagram. I never go on Facebook. And if I'm on there, it's not really that, just Instagram posting shit on there for me. National Wrestling Alliance, you go to nationalwrestlingalliance.com. If you need merch on there, same website /shop. Basically, we have a link tree on there. NWA Tix, TIX.com is where you can order tickets for things that you want to go live events. Right now, NWA 74 is going to be happening on August 27th and 28th, St. Louis, Missouri. It's the 74th anniversary of the National Wrestling Alliance, the most prestigious, longest-lasting wrestling promotion in the world. Pretty much, if you don't know it, every company you like other than AEW, because that's its own thing that never bridged off anything, but ECW, WCW, WWE, all were a part of the National Wrestling Alliance and bridged off of that. So there's a giant legacy there. And we're happy to keep on building that right now. You can catch us on YouTube or on Fight. There's the All Access package on there. $49.99 gets you everything for the year, all the pay-per-views, all the special events, and it also can get you first-run programming. Otherwise, YouTube has a replay on Fridays of NWA Power. Pretty much our program that has all the stuff going on. And Saturdays, grab a bowl of cereal. You can check out NWA USA on there as well. But again, sky's the limit. Who knows what's going to happen? There's a couple new things that hopefully will pan out and some exciting news coming from us in the coming months. And, you made the comment there that you used to work in reality TV back in the day. And I started laughing because I'm like, oh, wonder what it's like to film a reality show. Moving on.
Got that, pal.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap us up for this edition of the Turnbuckle Debate. We have a couple minutes. Actually, we usually do this for Tom. Paperclip, go ahead and tell him what's going on with you, man.
Well, of course, you can catch me at Coming Down the Aisle, pod.com. But also, more importantly, you can catch me on the Raw Down, where I will be the new Raw Down champion, probably, as you're hearing this. So make sure you tune in this Tuesday, Raw Down.
All right.
Raw down. Use protection.